Caribbean is, there we go. Okay, the recording's officially begun. The first question that we're going to kind of unpack as the regional group from the Caribbean is how Africans and people of African descent found themselves where they are. I'll open the floor here. I don't want to pre-script any responses. I don't think there's a right or wrong, but it is trying to gather as much as we can. Colleagues, please do engage. I've got good company in the room. I'm gonna close my mic, and I'm gonna pass the mic over to you all, please. Thank you.
I'm happy to
Lewis,
start.
would you like to give some of your?
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes, as I said, I'll start. I'm Marjorie Lewis. I'm a minister of the United Church in Jamaica and the Cayman Islands, currently chaplain at the Manning Memorial Chapel, Acadia University in Canada. I don't want to say too much because I'm on a panel tomorrow, but I will at least start things today. Of course, for the Caribbean and North America, the enslavement of Africans as chattel slavery is a major way in which they came. It's not the only way, but that's a significant way for many Africans into the Caribbean and North America. I'm in Nova Scotia, Canada, which is also interesting because you also had Africans who came into Canada and Nova Scotia enslaved. You also had Africans who ran away from the United States and came up through the Underground Railroad. And here in Nova Scotia, you also have some descendants of Jamaican Maroons who were basically deported by the British to Nova Scotia. And most of them eventually opted to go to Sierra Leone because the conditions were so awful here. So let me just leave that. Of course, in later years, we have migrants, and certainly from the Jamaican end, a lot of Jamaicans, 20th century in particular, would target Britain, the United States, and Canada as main countries for migration in seeking a better life. So that's my opening bat at the wicket.
Thank you so much, Marjorie. Thank you. It's a pleasure to have you. Thank you for sharing your insights. I wonder if I can, I mean, it's very interesting. I think the migration component is what many have a context of, but oftentimes we don't have the context of the slavery, or rather we don't have the full context. We know some, but how much of the full context of slavery should we be mixing?
I'm having difficulty hearing you.
Conversation with my great, you know, I'm probably on patchy sound, so let me not talk too much. May I use this opportunity to pass the microphone to Kibwe. Comrade Kibwe, if you can come on to add more of your thoughts to the first question that our colleague has started responding to, or would you like to add your thoughts to the second question, which I've posted in the chat box too? You are welcome. Thank you.
Yes, it's my pleasure. Good morning, good afternoon to some people. Where I am, it's 10:22 in Guyana, To the first question, I like to share the same sentiments. People of African descent, you know, the forced migration was one of the main reasons why we came to the Caribbean, or I wouldn't say came, we were brought to the Caribbean. Brought as enslaved Africans, not slaves. And of course, there's many other theories when it comes to the railroads and how we would have come besides enslavement. But I like to jump directly to the second question because I think justice is done towards the first question, as was answered earlier. But the second question, how did we try to fight against the colonialism or dictatorship of, our enslavers or, the colonizers? I believe that that has been an everlasting fight. As we've seen, for example, in Guyana, in 1966, we would fought for our own independence. And across the Caribbean, you've seen many countries. Only recently, Barbados, of course, sort of gained their independence and become a republic. But besides that, activism, advocacy, being the president of an organization that champions the cause for reparations, this is fairly new for me. Our organization is only about 3 years into 4, but from the inception, we've always been fighting against being oppressed or fighting against dictatorship, whether it be through advocacy, whether it be through rebellions, that's even in the enslavement period, revolts. So I think the fight against these oppressions or the colonies, or to be a part of colonies, etc., has been an everlasting one since the inception of enslavement from day one. People of African descent, people have this theory that people of African descent just allowed people to enslave them. I would never want to believe such. And if we should keep diving deep into history, we've always seen that, we've always been rebellious towards it. Yes, sadly, I might not be able to explain how and why, the colonizers have been victorious when it comes to enslaving people of African descent. But the fight has been constant towards coming out of enslavement. And we have, even though Emancipation Proclamation, to me, is not freedom, because, no one can give you freedom unless you give it to yourself. I believe people of African descent are continuously on that fight. That's one of the reasons why we push reparations. Reparations is the continuation of that liberation after the Emancipation Proclamation, whereby we can actually be free, not only physically, but mentally, and of course, regain some of the things that we would have lost from being enslaved. Thank you.
Good morning, all.
Good morning, Dr. Daniel. Good
Yes,
morning. Thank you so much. Please do speak. Yes, thank you.
Yeah, I fully agree with all what the last speaker said, comrade from Guyana. Enslaved Africans have always been rebellious, have always wanted to be free. That's why we had the question of the Maroons. That's how the whole struggle started, emancipation, the whole independence move. In fact, Dominica will be celebrating 43 years of independence on November 3rd. So as he said, it's a constant struggle. I think one of the many issues, as he mentioned, in that it seems like the colonialists are winning. I think it's a question of the psychological aspect and the question of disinformation, which they have mastered, where they are able to get our own people to even forget that they are Africans in the diaspora. A lot of people in our region would prefer not want to associate with Africa, not because of they themselves, but because of the constant propaganda and information that has been put forward. So that is one fight that we have to continue. We have been making great strides in that, and we just have to continue. I want to also state that the formation of the Caribbean Reparation Commission was a significant step in the struggle for reparations. I fully agree that we are in the reparations mode. We have moved from slavery, emancipation, independence, and right now the struggle is for reparation. That's why this is gaining so much traction. Even at United Nations level, you see various days are being designated for peoples of African descent. You have a decade for peoples of African descent. So I think we have made good progress. What we need to do is to build upon our gains, and the question of getting our people in terms of their minds to get back into that mode and understand that you're an African wherever you are, whether you're in the Caribbean or wherever, and just focus on the achievements of our people. That's one of the things we have to push. There are a lot of inventions that a lot of people don't know that these are inventions from from Africans. So it's a constant battle, and I feel confident that based on the responses thus far, we have seen the University of Glasgow in England pledging monies to assist, and all that is through the effort of the Caribbean Reparations Commission. And I need to point out Sir Hilary Beckles, Professor Hilary Beckles, Professor Vereen Shepherd, and a lot of people who are around and just constantly chipping at it by giving the information. So information dissemination is key, but the information that we would have to be right. In closing, I would just want to also state that we have to look at quickly at terminology. Terminology is important. We should probably stop using the word slaves and start thinking of, if we say enslaved Africans, it gives a different connotation. So the terminology is important, and we have to start using the right terminology. We have to find ways through books, through cartoons, through any way that we can get the information out there about Africa. And as time goes on, we will see the road. Another key aspect, I'm not sure later on we can mention it, is to bridge that gap between the perception of Africans in Africa and Africa in the diaspora. I'll just throw it out there, but it's an area that we need to look at. We have seen moves like that, forums like that do bridge the gap, and we just want to have more of this kind of exchange where we can at least work together and realize that we all are one people. Thank you for the opportunity.
Hi, good morning. Hilary Brown here. So I just wanted to endorse really all of what the speakers before have said, Kibwe, Dr. Dublin, and our other colleague who spoke before. I think that, I support the view that, how we got here started with that period of enslavement. And I do believe that racism was born out of slavery. And so coming out of that horrific experience, and then all of the systems and structures that were put in place to perpetuate that discrimination and that hate, and which, through various colonial structures. And of course, we saw the Jim Crow era in the United States. We saw apartheid in South Africa. So although I know that Africans on the African continent are not as connected, maybe not as aware, but the point is that the history of that enslavement and the related racism born out of it is something that affects all of us. And so that's why, CARICOM really has been a leading voice on the call for reparatory justice, because that is all part of the restitution. You can't move past where we are without an acknowledgement of the wrong that was committed against the African continent, and the way in which the underdevelopment of Africa and of the Americas was directly related to this experience. So this is why we continue to call for reparations, as Damian and Kibwe have spoken to, because it has to be, it's an integral part of that reconciliation and moving forward. And are we organized collectively? Well, we are not organized well, and we have to recognize that although we are making progress, I think as Damian said, we have formed a reparations commission, but we are not, as people of African descent, we are not well connected and well coordinated. And that is a feature of the colonial experience, where we were all connected to the mother country, but not to each other. And that has continued through media imperialism, where we are all attuned every day to CNN and BBC and Al Jazeera. And I have very little knowledge of what's happening on the African continent unless one of those news sources, or I seek it out myself. You know, I will hear of something happening and go and read upon it specifically. And I'm sure that's also the reverse. So the systems and structures continue to keep us apart. And unless we take a very deliberate approach to addressing those structures, we will continue to not be well organized and not be well coordinated. And that is exactly what those in the dominant position are counting on. They know that we're not well organized, and they know that the structures do not facilitate our working better together. And so that is part of the resistance that we really have to put up as well. And so I guess, you know, that is why I felt that this conference was an important way of making some of those connections. And I tried to get the word out to some of the, you know, our colleagues here in CARICOM and in the CARICOM Reparations Commission. I'm very happy to see so many of them online today. But that really is the conundrum, and that really is what we need to do. Very recently, I was invited to join a group of civil society activists and scholars, and we were working together to submit a proposal for funding a major race project. And it was a fascinating experience for me because I made connections with people in the African continent, in the African diaspora in Europe, that I never knew before, had never worked with before. And it really was a very inspiring experience. And so, and it also brought home to me how much we are not connected, and how much more we need to do to work together. So I will stop there, and thank you.
And just quickly.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, just quickly. Concerning the same third question on organizing, you know, I think we should have an active portal whereby, for example, when in the opening ceremony, we heard about in Johannesburg, the university would have done talks about reparations, which of course should be added. Those deliberations would be added into the conference in the future.
Yes, please come through. Yes, thank you.
Yes, sorry about that. Yes, I said as I was talking about, or as continuing from what Dr. Brown was talking about when it comes to organizing, on how organized we are, I believe that we should have an active portal that keeps us connected and keep us not only connected by who is a part of what and what is actually happening. In the opening ceremony, we were listening to, it was Reverend, we're speaking about the active talks about reparations in the university in Johannesburg. I can't remember exactly the name of the university, but those talks about reparations, which should be added to the conference in the future. Those are things that I was never aware of. And I believe that we should be able to disseminate information more actively, and we should know exactly where our bases are, who are involved, and get this information circulated. For example, I'm sure some person may not know who I am, and I might not know who some persons are. Until a conference like this, then we might have the opportunity to know who is who and what they are doing, etc. If we can have an active portal that only waits for a conference, but on a regular, if somebody is newly appointed or if somebody is doing something recent, it can be sent to that portal so people can be updated beforehand, before a conference. You know, it gives the movement more momentum. Because if you should wait for, most conferences comes annually, some comes quarterly, and within those spaces of time, waiting for a conference, then to know what is really happening, a lot is being done against us as people. As we know, we have a great challenge when it comes to unity. And that, of course, is, what should I say, an inheritance of enslavement, you know, to keep us as African people divided. Caribbean people being divided from the continent, people from the continent being divided from people in the Caribbean. And even in the Caribbean, there is some divide. right? Yes, we have the CRC, the CARICOM Reparations Commission. Yes, we have Caribbean, or I should say, reparations committees or councils across the Caribbean. We have a lot of movements happening, but there's still much disconnect when it comes to the networking, when it comes to the information that's been disseminated. I want to know what's happening in Jamaica promptly, as often as possible, as so Jamaica should know what's happening in Guyana. Same should happen in Antigua and Barbuda, same goes to Dominica. I think we should try to organize people and a system that is actively working towards keeping an active portal of information, active portal of networking, whereby we constantly connecting people, constantly informing people, and constantly sharing the information of what's happening when it comes to this movement, when it comes to what people of African descent are doing.
Quickly, if I may, just to follow up on Kitwe's point, the CARICOM Reparations Commission recognized that and established what we call the Center for Reparations Research based in Jamaica, UAE, with support from UAE. And this organization is doing some sort of what he mentioning. Probably we need to up the game, because each of the National Reparations Committee have representations on the CARICOM Reparations Commission. So through this Center for Reparations, which they put out information frequently, coordinate information from around and inform. But I fully agree that probably we should maybe take it to another level. So this will be noted. But there already that organization that exists that could serve in terms of the role he's mentioning there. And just to follow up on some of the questions as to what should be done. I mentioned earlier, we must never underestimate the power of the media manipulation. As Hillary mentioned, the colonialists, they are organized and they have always been part of the strategy is divide and rule. So we have to be able to counteract that. And it's a constant battle. The structures are in place. Some of these are structures that we cannot dismantle, but what we have to do is set up our own structures and work closer together, and once we strengthen ourselves for our own structures, then we can have our information flowing and we can be connected. So it's work in progress. It's a constant activity. You have to get the young people involved. And as you mentioned, there are a lot of different organizations. It's representing themselves. You have the Rastafari movement, which is in all the islands, but that level of coordination and organization to come together as one unit, one voice, and express what you have to say. But I'm confident, based on the time I've been in the movement, that I'm seeing serious impact. The word is getting around. We're seeing serious reaction to it, even from the colonial countries and even institutions like insurance companies and universities who benefited from the proceeds of slavery. We're starting to see them coming around, and that was only possible because of the constant dialogue and constant information that we put out there. So we just have to continue, and then we'll see the impact as time goes on.
Yes, I wanted to make another comment too on the Permanent Forum on People of African Descent, and to say that this is really a very welcome development within the framework of the UN, and certainly gives us a platform to advance some of the burning issues that we have. And so we need to give our full support to that, and to be also very vigilant about how it is treated within the UN system. And I wanted to highlight in that context too, well, I wanted to say that in addition to just being in touch and being aware of what is happening, because we have spoken a lot about, being more connected within the Caribbean, but it is also about being connected with the other diasporic groups in the other regions that are meeting separately as well. But I think an important part of what we need to be able to do is also to be able to come together in a very strong way on issues that are important to us and to push back on them. And so in that context too, I know that there was recently the forming of the AFCAR group within the UN, which is the African group CARICOM. And so those countries numbering 68 have agreed to work together within that forum. But I think the one that concerns me greatly is what happened recently with the 20th, the commemoration of the 20th anniversary of the Durban Declaration and Program of Action and the Race Conference of 2001. And seeing those 37 countries that boycotted and sort of had this trumped up reason that the original conference had anti-Semitic overtones, and so from thence onwards, they are going to boycott any commemoration of Durban. And I think this is something that we all need to push back very strongly on, because there was certainly nothing anti-Semitic about this 20th anniversary. And to me, it's just clearly an excuse for those countries to not engage on this matter of race and racism and xenophobia and so on. And that is where I would have liked to have seen all of the voices of the countries of Africa and in her diaspora really push back very strongly on what happened with that commemoration, because when they come to do Durban plus 25 and Durban plus 30, we're going to be getting the same thing. So it is our solidarity on matters of importance that I think is key. And one of them too is reparations, whereas the Caribbean is pushing forward very strongly on this and with a lot of support from our diaspora colleagues in the United States. We know that it still doesn't have much traction and maybe not as much understanding and not as much support as we would like to see on the African continent. So this is another area that we need considerable work. Thank you.
Colleagues, thank you so much for your participation. I wish we could continue, and I do think there will be a second opportunity for us to gather to continue this discussion. You will see that in the chat box, I've posted a link that you can use to rejoin the main plenary. What you will hear there and see there is some of the similar comments from the different regions. So North America, Europe, Latin America, and Africa, because we were all speaking about the same topic. So let's join on the link which I've posted. Let's go back to the plenary and let's regroup with everyone. Please don't go away completely. It should take about 15 minutes to fully conclude. So I'll end this room, but let's go back and connect with all the other 4 regions then. Thank you so much for coming through.